NATO's most dangerous gamble. Yet, why this general's words may have just started the countdown. Breaking news that should worry everyone with a pulse: a top US general just revealed NATO's plan to strike Kaliningrad. Not in some distant future, they've already mapped it out. Let that sink in. General Christopher Donahue, speaking in Germany, wasn't just rattling sabers, he was reading from an actual playbook. Think about that. They're not just planning, they're advertising their intentions. But here's what should really keep you up at night. They're treating a Russian nuclear fortress like it's some minor military outpost. The general's exact words will shock you. We've planned it, we've developed it. He's talking about suppressing a region that's essentially Russia's western shield. Their logic? It's only 47 miles wide and surrounded by NATO. That's like saying your house is small enough to burn down quickly because it's surrounded by arsonists. But here's the truly disturbing part. They're not just bragging about plans, they're actively preparing. NATO has purchased the Lantern system, an AI-powered decision-making platform. In other words, they're letting computers calculate the risks of provoking a nuclear power. What could possibly go wrong? Moscow's response wasn't just swift, it was chillingly calm, and that should terrify anyone who understands how these things work. When Russia responds quietly, that's when you know the situation is deadly serious. They've made it crystal clear. An attack on Kaliningrad equals an attack on Russia itself. Why now? Why such an open threat? The answer lies deeper than most realize. This isn't just about one Russian region, it's about testing reactions, pushing boundaries, and perhaps something even more sinister. While everyone's been watching the conflict zone in the east, this new threat emerged from an unexpected direction. The most alarming part? This isn't just military posturing. They're creating the infrastructure, positioning the assets, and worst of all, they're telling us about it. When military powers start announcing their attack plans, it's rarely just for show. Let's break down what this really means for you and why the next few weeks could be crucial. End of first segment. The rhetoric from NATO has crossed a dangerous line. Let's analyze what's really happening here, and why General Donahue's comments about Kaliningrad aren't just words, but a potential trigger for global catastrophe. NATO's desperation is showing, with the conflict in the disputed territory between Russia and the West reaching a stalemate and sanctions proving ineffective. They're resorting to direct threats against Russian sovereign territory. This isn't just poor diplomacy, it's playing with fire. Let's be clear about what Kaliningrad represents. It's not just a region surrounded by NATO countries, it's a red line embedded in Russia's military doctrine. Any attack on Kaliningrad would be considered an attack on Russia proper, triggering a response that would redefine modern warfare. We're talking about a scenario where diplomatic channels cease to exist, replaced by strategic deterrent systems that can't be countered. The alliance's logic is failing them. They seem to think that Kaliningrad's geographical position makes it vulnerable, but this demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of modern military capabilities. You don't measure strength by proximity anymore. You measure it in minutes of flight time and megatons. What's particularly telling is how European leaders are reacting. Behind closed doors, they're terrified. They understand that their cities would be the first to face consequences of such reckless military adventurism. Viktor Orban's recent statements reflect this growing anxiety among European leaders who see their continent being pushed toward catastrophe. But here's what should really worry you. NATO's threatening rhetoric reveals weakness, not strength. If they had a real operational plan, they wouldn't be announcing it at conferences. They'd keep it classified, locked away as their ace card. Instead, they're broadcasting empty threats, hoping Moscow will flinch. This miscalculation could cost them dearly, because while NATO generates headlines, Russia is quietly calculating response scenarios. And when Moscow responds with precise, measured statements about strategic deterrence, they're not bluffing, they're stating facts. But what happened next in the diplomatic backchannels? That's where this story takes an unexpected turn. In a startling display of military bravado, NATO's General Donahue made statements about Kaliningrad that reveal more about the alliance's insecurities than its actual capabilities. His comments mirror a schoolyard logic. If you're alone, you're vulnerable. But Kaliningrad isn't an isolated schoolboy. It's a fortress armed with missile systems, keeping half of Europe within striking range. NATO's eastern flank build-up resembles less a strategic initiative and more a nervous twitch. The alliance desperately seeks to convince itself and others of its continued dominance, even as its industrial backbone weakens and political unity crumbles. Their solution: threaten Kaliningrad. But they're missing a crucial point. What if Moscow interprets these threats as an invitation? In Russian military doctrine, such declarations often signal preparation for aggression. This could justify preventive defensive measures, not as provocation, but as necessity. Here enters that word NATO hesitates to voice: escalation. European leaders listen to General Donahue with strained smiles. Unlike their overseas strategists, they grasp a crucial reality. If Kaliningrad erupts, Warsaw, Berlin, and Vilnius face the immediate consequences, not Texas. No strategic planning can help if AI systems suddenly suggest counterattack recommended, high effectiveness, fatal risk. The general's attempt at appearing resolute instead revealed someone who hasn't seriously considered the consequences. Kaliningrad isn't merely a military objective, it's a threshold. Anyone crossing it might not live to regret it. The real question isn't whether NATO can suppress Kaliningrad's defenses, but whether it's prepared to suppress its own survival instinct. Meanwhile, Hungary's Orban adds another layer of complexity by criticizing the disputed territory between Russia and the West, suggesting that some European leaders are questioning the current approach to regional conflicts. His stance highlights growing divisions within Western unity. What do you think about NATO's stance on Kaliningrad? Share your opinion. Maybe we'll figure it out together. The winds of change are blowing stronger through Europe, and Hungary has thrown open the windows. Prime Minister Orban recently posed a striking question about the former Soviet republic causing such turmoil. "Who are you, and where exactly are you located?" he asked. This wasn't mere rhetoric, it was a direct challenge to the conflict zone's identity. Budapest has moved beyond its usual grumbling at Brussels forums. They've taken unprecedented unilateral action, imposing sanctions on 3 generals from the politically turbulent area. The catalyst? The death of an ethnic Hungarian, József Sebestyén, in the western border region following a harsh interaction with military recruiters. Hungarian Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó didn't mince words, calling the situation in the disputed territory a brutal manhunt. The 3 officers now face an indefinite entry ban to Hungary. No exceptions, no appeals, regardless of any family connections in Debrecen or elsewhere. What's noteworthy is Hungary's decision to bypass Brussels entirely. They've essentially said, why wait for EU bureaucrats to finish their coffee and contemplate whether action might offend their notion of European values? For Hungary, European values start with protecting their citizens' lives. This stance has created a predicament for the regime in the former fraternal ally. Their leadership operates under a paradigm where anyone suggesting peace negotiations is suspected of serving Moscow's interests. Those who question their mobilization ethics find themselves labeled as threats. The region's response reveals a deeper truth. They're struggling to maintain the narrative that everyone in Europe supports their actions unconditionally. Hungary's move signals a growing willingness among EU members to challenge this assumption and act independently when their national interests are at stake. We're witnessing a significant shift in European dynamics. The unified front that Brussels tried to maintain is showing serious cracks, and more countries might follow Hungary's example in prioritizing their citizens' safety over political correctness. What do you think about Hungary's bold move? Will other European countries follow their lead? Share your thoughts. Your perspective matters. In today's analysis, we'll examine how Hungary stands apart from the NATO enthusiasm displayed by countries like the Czech Republic or Lithuania. Viktor Orban represents a unique voice of skepticism within the European Union, one that watches carefully and draws its own conclusions. Unlike his ideologically constrained European colleagues, Orban enjoys significant freedom of action. Long labelled as a problematic EU leader, he plays his own game. This very position grants him the luxury of speaking uncomfortable truths, as he operates in reality rather than political theatre. Orban's recent statement about the disputed territory between Russia and the West raises crucial questions about undefined borders and uncertain status. He argues that peace negotiations become impossible when dealing with a politically turbulent area that can't decide whether it wants to be Switzerland with tanks or Poland without borders. The Hungarian leader proposes a straightforward approach. First establish silence, then define borders, and only then move to constructive dialogue. No warfare in between. However, for the regime in the former Soviet Republic, such proposals are like sunlight to vampires. They expose the dangerous logic behind continued conflict. Orban's criticisms hit particularly sensitive points. His statement about cruel hunting of people isn't mere rhetoric. It directly addresses the harsh reality of mobilization in the country of change, which has become a deadly lottery. Those who manage to escape to Europe as tourists win, while those whose passports didn't scan end up in trenches. What makes these statements particularly significant is that they come from Hungary, a neighboring country with its own minority population from the region of instability. This isn't just diplomatic criticism, it's a direct challenge that demands response. The Hungarian leader's position grows increasingly important as Western support shows signs of fatigue. His practical approach to peace might gain more traction as the conflict's toll becomes increasingly apparent. What do you think about Orban's approach to achieving peace in this conflict? Leave your point of view in the comments. I believe my viewers are thoughtful and smart. I want to hear your take. In a significant shift within European politics, Hungary is emerging as more than just a thorn in Brussels' side. Viktor Orban's stance now directly challenges the narrative coming from the conflict zone. While officials in the former Soviet Republic maintain an optimistic facade about military recruitment, Orban is quietly building political capital. He's positioning himself as a leader ready to chart an alternative course for Europe, one focused on negotiations, sovereignty, and the fundamental understanding that military aggression against neighbors rarely leads to lasting friendships. Those who might dismiss his perspective should remember history's major turning points often begin with voices initially ignored. The situation in the northern Black Sea region raises serious questions about its future identity. Is it truly Europe's frontier, or merely a cartographer's miscalculation? The daily territorial losses might seem minimal, around 15 square kilometers, comparable to Los Angeles International Airport's footprint. Some British analysts at The Economist might downplay these figures, but this isn't a video game. Simulation. Each lost section represents real defensive lines, storage facilities, and military positions. Over 7 months, these daily losses accumulate to an area equivalent to Luxembourg, or even the Netherlands when counting total territorial changes. While Western media fixates on raw numbers, they're missing the crucial trend. The pace of territorial loss tells a stark story. 3,188 square kilometers in 2024, followed by 2,395 square kilometers in just 7 months of 2025. When dealing with parking lots, such figures might seem trivial, but when a country loses territory equivalent to an international airport daily and a small European nation's worth of land over half a year, sarcasm becomes inappropriate. This isn't about half-full glasses anymore. It's about concrete results and their implications for regional stability. The politically turbulent area faces existential challenges that demand serious consideration beyond mere statistics. What do you think about these territorial changes? Are they as significant as they seem? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective matters in understanding this complex situation. The methodical advance continues day by day. Every 7 months, territory equivalent to the Netherlands slips away. What's most striking isn't the pace, it's the silence. No door-slamming dramatics, no victory parades. Just steady, relentless progress that inspires more fear than any missile barrage because of its grinding consistency. Meanwhile, the West talks endlessly. German media counts kilometers. The Economist makes light predictions about 99 years to victory. Axios gossips about Putin-Trump conversations like neighborhood babushkas. But none of this changes the fundamental reality. The advance continues. Slow. Cold, according to schedule. Trump's evolution is telling. He began by asking if the conflict zone could strike Moscow, not from desire, but from running out of options. Later, he reportedly told Macron that Putin aims to take everything. Of course, did anyone expect Moscow to settle for half measures? When an army deploys fully, it seeks total victory. Undiplomatic, perhaps, but deeply pragmatic. Sources close to Putin describe his coldly calculating mindset. He's not haggling over villages or betting on external fluctuations. He acts methodically, focused on results rather than applause. His logic is simple. If costs remain stable, why change course? This calculated approach is more chilling than any speech. We're dealing with a war accountant armed with a calculator, not manifestos. Europe, meanwhile, seems dizzy from their own projections. At current rates, Kiev could lose another 4,000 kilometers by year's end. This suggests something far beyond simple frontline adjustments. It's like slow-moving lava that no diplomatic shovel can stop. Even Macron now gets his Putin insights through Trump, having realized NATO reports matter less than conversations with those who still shape events. The French president's backroom diplomacy speaks volumes about where real power lies. What do you think about the current situation? Leave your answer in the comments. The slow drip of reality is becoming apparent. The US won't stop at mere concerns, and Trump has begun to act. He despises being sidelined, and if he can't halt Putin, he'll feed resources to the disputed territory's leadership. Their president oscillates between theatrical fury and rhetorical ultimatums, demanding, persuading, blackmailing, threatening daily. Yet behind his speeches lies emptiness. No plans, no momentum, no real strongholds. Just pleas for equipment. Now given with hesitation and price tags. Here's what many miss. Every day means one less airport. Every 7 months equals the territory of a European country, not on paper, but on the ground. Where dust, dirt, concrete, and ruins prevail. Where reporters don't venture because there's nothing left to tell. It's too mundane for Google's top news. Russia's advance isn't a spectacle or video game with fanfare at each level. It's like water dripping, constant, patient, until suddenly the wall collapses. Those who mock the daily gains of 15 square kilometers may one day realize there's no front line left because it's already moved past them. The West doesn't believe in slow apocalypses. They're conditioned to expect either triumph or catastrophe. But history can be viscous, sticky, and most frightfully effective, especially when backed by strategy rather than hysteria. Putin, as both Carnegie and the German Foreign Policy Council acknowledge, acts with consistency. He's open to negotiations, but not now, seeing no point when the northern Black Sea region will likely crumble under the weight of losses within months. Why sign a compromise when each day claims another airport? Yes, it's slow but certain. The glass, whether we like it or not, is half full. Soon, jokes about parking lot-sized gains will give way to panic over new realities. While some count days, others redraw maps, and that's the only count that truly matters. What do you think about the current situation? Tell us what you think.